Hi, welcome and thank you so much for joining today. So for this panel session, we'll be discussing successfully implementing platform technology into the construction business. We'll be running through some questions with our panel, and we also have some top tips to share, so we're really looking forward to it. A couple of housekeeping items. We will be recording the session, so you will be able to watch that back later, and we're also available in the live chat, so if you have any questions, please do throw them in. So we have a great panel with us today. So we have Anne Hickman from Procore and Stuart Biles from Pexhurst in the UK, and myself who'll be moderating. So my name's Debbie, and I guess to kick off introductions, as I said, my name's Debbie. I'm an implementation manager at Procore. I've been here for around 3 years. I initially started out in our Toronto office and more recently moved back to the UK, where I'm an implementation manager and team lead. So I guess my role as implementation manager is really working with new clients to get set up on Procore and also just helping them to see the value in the tools as soon as possible. Anne, over to you.
Thanks, Debbie. I'm a sales engineer with Procore and I joined in February. I help clients to evaluate the system going through the sales cycle, take a look at your work processes, see what works, what can fit in with the platform, and see what tools we have to help. I joined Procore from a client. So I've sat on the other side of the fence as well, just as Stuart does, and was actually part of the team that evaluated Procore amongst a number of other solutions, selected Procore, implemented, and had the pleasure of using it out on sites. Stuart.
Thanks, Anne. My name's Stuart Biles. I'm a construction director at Pexhurst Services, and I'm a Procore client. We were rolling out Procore about 2 years ago. 2.5 years ago now, and I was involved in the initial implementation and selection of Procore. We're a small to medium business that does internal refurbishments, warehouse units, industrial, commercial, and as I say, yeah, we've been with Procore just over 2 years now.
Great, thanks everyone. So let's dive into some of the questions. So question one, evaluating new technology can be a challenging process, especially when making sure that you need to account for everyone's needs across the company. So when evaluating Procore, what key points were really important for you? And Stuart, why don't you kick us off with this one?
Sure, yeah, no problem, Debbie. So we were looking initially at a system for us really that managed just a very small part of our business initially, which was the RFI system. We identified that we had a little bit of a weakness. The feedback we were getting from our client teams and our project managers internally was that the RFI systems needed a little bit of help. They were manually being inputted, they were long-winded, and people were losing a little bit of focus on them. So we were looking for something to manage that. And we were actually recommended Procore by one of our clients who'd been using it for a little while, and said, why don't you have a look at it? So we kind of came across Procore, had a look at it, and it was really important for us in terms of the implementation to make sure that it was something that all of our teams were going to use, to embrace quite quickly, and that they could see the value of. We'd had software packages before, kind of off-the-shelf software packages, where they weren't picked up very quickly by our clients or by some of the users, and they're almost a dead duck at that point already before you've really even implemented them. So for us, it was really important to kind of make sure that we bought into something that all of our supply chain were going to buy into as well.
That's great, thanks Stuart. Anne, anything to add there? How was it for you?
Yeah, probably quite similar to Stuart in terms of where we ended up was not where we started. RFIs, funnily enough, was something for us as well. We initially started at sort of a very traditional document management point of view, just trying to improve the way that we filed documents and standardized. We were looking at it as well from an ISO 9001 perspective, trying to maintain an accreditation there. Coming in from that though, like Stuart's saying, really realized that we needed to broaden out looking at the needs and looking at the different roles, because the way that a director wants to see information and their needs from a platform probably very different than your foreman, who's going to be required to put information into that system at some point, but probably has a very different perspective on it. And everybody in between, like Stuart's saying, the client buy-in across the organization, project managers, site managers, QS. So I spent a lot of time sort of sitting in site offices listening in, seeing what the problems were, and trying to get involved and see what information we were trying to present out in meetings, seeing what we were trying to track. And then having gathered all of that, actually prioritizing it. Because once you've got that big shopping list, trying to work out what were the really important bits were key, because different platforms speak to different things. So having some prioritization, and what I just tried to understand a little bit to help me just think of it from a business case point of view was what was costing time, what actually cost us money, like where did we lose money, and then indirectly linked to both of those and cost you both time and money was the quality bit. Where were we missing at delivering to quality? And that just helped me understand like what are our top 3 or our top 5, where are our things that really hit. Funnily enough, RFIs stayed in that list, but other things as well. But that meant that when it came to evaluating all the different possible solutions, I had a really good idea of like, if those were my top 3, those were the things I really had to hit, and then where were my nice to haves around the side. So yeah, understanding what everybody needed, prioritizing them, and then being really sure in evaluation with all the different software providers that we looked at, seeing where it mapped back to that.
That's really cool. I love that you both put like people at the front of that as well. It's like, these are the people who will have to use it. It's not just a case of having to use a new software. I think you both kind of touched on it, but one thing from an implementation perspective, I'd maybe just add and press on a little bit there as well, is just knowing and having an understanding of who your resources are going to be internally when you're looking at that evaluation. So who's going to be helping you roll Procore out? And then on the flip side, from the software companies that you're evaluating, what's the availability there? So do they have an implementation? Is it included? What's that going to look like? And does it align with how we want to roll out a new software system? I think that's really important as well. Cool. All right. Question 2. So can you talk us a little bit through your implementation at Procore? And Anne, why don't you kick us off with this one?
Yeah, sure. So Procore, and I know now from saying this from the inside, always says, you know, early stage projects, etc. And so that was definitely what we were advised going into implementation. We had 2 key projects. They probably weren't quite as early stage as I would have liked. One of them was 2 months in, but it was an 18-month project. So well worth getting it onto the platform. Had to do a little bit of backloading, drawing revisions, get some RFIs put in there. But got all that information done. We were really keen to control centrally inspection templates going in, just making sure that full body of reference information for the site teams was in there. So I made sure to get the backloaded drawings and RFIs that the project team needed to see, the inspection templates that the foremen and supervisors needed to be using, get all of that in there, made it useful and relevant before I gave them their logins, so that as soon as they went in, they saw what they needed, and that sort of got a little bit of buy-in and also some contextual understanding to what they were using the platform for. And then the next part of it was to get them using. Debbie and I know we've talked separately about getting site teams involved and the questions we often get this side of the fence from clients, but I can really confidently say, like, getting that site team involved, they download an app from an app store, they open it up, it's something they can use quite simply and easily straight away. And really bore true. Good example for me was with my foreman. 3 foremen from 3 different projects, got them together for less than half an hour, took them through filling in inspections, their daily site checks, what they needed to do. We got them in that half an hour, their logins, passwords, downloaded the app from the App Store and got them in on their phones. 30 minutes later, they were out on site trying it out in the sandbox test project that you get at implementation, trying them out. They came straight back in with, like the templates, by the way, this would make my life easier, that would make my life easier. I split a couple of the checks into 2 for them, updated it straight away on the laptop, pushed it out to their phones, and they were off and using. It increased our compliance with inspections straight from day one, but they were so quick to get using, it was really simple to do. And I followed that method with other teams. So the consultant team, so employers agent, architects, got them in a room a little bit longer, spent a couple of hours with them, less about the mobile app, more about the information they could see on the RFIs dashboard, things like that. And everyone was really involved from straight away. So followed the Procore process, got the information in, and then got people involved by giving them the tools that they needed, made their life a bit easier. And that was a really good hook.
No, definitely. That's great. Thanks for sharing. Stuart, over to you, and no pressure, because I know it was me who implemented you all those years ago.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Debbie. I think just echoing a lot really of what Anne said. We started looking at Procore, as I say, just as an RFI tool. So we were, if I'm honest, we were a little bit nervous initially. You know, we're taking on a new platform, and we've done our homework, but it's always a bit scary when you roll out something new. So what we decided to do was we took some of our younger teams, our assistant site managers, the ones that we felt would be a little bit more comfortable with technology, and we paired them up with some of the guys who were a little bit less comfortable with technology. So we had groups, very small groups, but pairs. And then very similar to what Anne said, we took, we downloaded the app from the App Store, and we said, okay, here we are. This is what we're going to do. We're going to run it. And it was a very soft start initially. We said it's just going to be used at the moment for running our RFIs, and that's all you need to look at. So don't concern yourself with the other bits for now. Just have a look at the RFI system. So again, similar to what Anne said, really, they were up and running on the RFI part of it very, very quickly, and they could see the benefit almost straight away, because whereas before they'd be sending emails and there'd be email trails and spreadsheets, suddenly they had this system where they would raise an RFI, the client would have it, and then they could see the responses coming back from the client. So within a couple of days, they could already see the value of it. And when we started pulling people in and having chats with the site guys, site managers and the assistant site managers, that's what we were getting back right from the get-go, that just the RFI and managing that whole process, the PMs were looking at it and going, it's saving us time, it's saving us sitting in the office tracking all of these RFIs. And then, of course, it kind of rolled on from there. We started looking at the technical submittals and the forms. And very similar to what Anne said, the good thing about the platform is that if there is a change, a tweak that needs to be done with a form, it's almost an instantaneous thing. If I'm sat at my desk sometimes, I'll get a phone call. Somebody will say to me, it would be really great if we could do this with a form, and we have a quick chat internally, and I can often within half an hour go, yeah, actually we can just tweak that form, and we can put that in to make your life easier. And then that feedback loop carries on, because we send that form out, we get a little bit more feedback from the site guys who will say, oh yeah, I was thinking that as well. So it's really good. The immediacy of it is really good, really helpful for us.
That's great. And Stuart, did you start off with a couple of projects? Was it one sort of pilot project you initially went with?
So we literally rolled it out on a couple of smaller projects, and for us, a smaller value project ranges between about 100 and 200,000 pounds. That's the lower end of the kind of stuff that we do. So we were very lucky. We had 2 or 3 projects that were going live, and we allocated Procore to those and said, right, we're going to use Procore from start to finish on those. Look at the life of it and see how it works from the start to the finish when we're closing out, and then evaluate it on that basis. And if I'm honest, we didn't even get to the end of a lot of those initial projects before we started rolling out other things, because of the ease of use. We were anticipating it being a lot more difficult to roll the system out and the platform out, and the take up of it across our sites. It was so much easier than we thought, which was great.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Thanks, everyone. So I guess moving on to question 3, and Stuart, this one's for you. So you've been using Procore for a little while now. How has your experience been different from previous software solutions?
Yeah, so we've had some good experiences. We've had some bad experiences with software packages, as you can imagine. We are very lucky as a company. We have a lot of internal software packages which we were running on. But when we started to transition over to Procore, it was obvious right from kind of the get-go that a lot of the systems that we were using internally, Procore superseded those and did exactly what we were doing internally. So it was initially very exciting for us to go, actually, we do that internally, Procore would do that. And believe it or not, 2 years down the line, we're still doing that with the Procore platform. Whether that means we've been slow to roll out, I'm not quite sure. But from our point of view as a business, it's worked really well, because as we progress and as we grow into the platform, we realize that actually, it does that as well. Initially in the implementation stage, it was really helpful for us to get the kind of feedback where we could see which of our users were using the platform and which were perhaps a little bit slow on the uptake. So those graphics that we got during the implementation stage from you guys, from you, Debbie, and the team, they were really helpful because they identified the guys that we actually needed to say, hang on a sec, you don't seem to be using Procore as much as everybody else. Is there a problem with it? You know, you're finding it difficult? Do you need a little bit more support? So that was really helpful. And even obviously on the platform itself, you've got the live chat. I'm always saying to all of our guys, the live chat function is amazing. You know, there's always somebody there to help. The tutorial videos and the training program that Procore runs, that's a really good resource as well. And again, whenever we bring somebody on board and I'm responsible for rolling out Procore to a new inductee, it's really important for us to be able to say, there you go, have a play with it. And I always say to them, yeah, just go and play in the sandbox project on Procore. You can't break it. And so far to date, nobody has. So that's good. That's good.
Yeah, good to hear no one's broke sandbox there. I do love the sort of the usage data that we can share, because it goes one of two ways. One, it highlights anyone that's not using the system, or it just drives this like competitiveness between people of trying to be the top user, which is always fun.
Yeah, we had a bit of that, Debbie, yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember. And is there anything you'd add or anything on the support side there?
Yeah, I think to add to the support and the ease of use, I think, so I was in Stuart's position being responsible sort of during sort of rolling it out, but those resources are really good. So people will naturally go back to the face in the room. So I'm sure, Stuart, you found this as well. It's like, Stuart, can you help? But if you can direct people in to that help function, to the live chat, whatever, people sort of get used to it and really enjoy it. And particularly the response on the live chat. So quick, always really friendly and helpful, and people really enjoyed it, to the extent where my favorite anecdote was a colleague of mine saying, do you think that Procore live chat could help me sort out my love life? I said, maybe that's a step too far, but we could give it a go. Yeah, it was really nice. We always felt like we had somebody there, definitely had backup, and I definitely didn't become the Procore help desk, which was something that I was sort of concerned about becoming, but the resources were really there, fingertip available, and really helpful.
No, absolutely. I'm sure they'd also have a good go at sorting out your colleagues' love life there as well for you. That would definitely come through. Nice. Okay, cool. So moving through, we do have some top tips that we're sharing on screen there. So these are really just some top tips that we wanted to share from ourselves on the implementation side. So let's dive into those a little bit more. Stuart, do you want to talk a little bit about yours first there?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, Debbie, there are a few. I think it's obviously really important to make sure that you're engaging all of your teams and making sure you're getting a lot of feedback. We do a lot of workshops with our site teams and really try and get their feedback. It's really important to have that. And I think it's really easy to roll something out and not get that feedback. And with Procore, what's really good is that feedback, we feel that somebody's listening to us. So, you know, the suggestions that you can post. I mean, I had something the other day with a colleague who was on one of the live chats, and there was a particular suggestion that he made, and somebody came back to him almost immediately and said, yeah, that's a great idea. We'll have a look at that. You know, just knowing that somebody's there and somebody's listening. And then I think another top tip for me is just this thing where Procore seems to do an awful lot of the things that all of us have to do day to day, and whether you're rolling it out slowly or embracing the whole platform, it's really just to get stuck into it, and don't be afraid to say, actually, I've got this part of the business that is not running particularly well, or we need to look at. Let's have a look and see if Procore has something that currently does that. And we've been surprised, as I say, over the last couple of years, that every time we've gone into the platform and explored it in more detail, we've realised that it does that, which is just great. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thanks. Anne, do you want to get to your top tips?
Yeah, I think going back to sort of almost to where Stuart and I both touched on sort of at the start, I think one of my top tips would be around just making sure that you've included the right people and the right breadth of people at that evaluation point. Really thinking about what everybody needs. because if you've picked something that only speaks to one particular role within the organization, then chances are it may not implement that well. So if you've asked everybody and you've made sure that you've touched on those things, you know that you've done your homework. So when you choose your software, you've hopefully chosen something that's going to be well received. And if people are enthusiastic for something coming in, it's going to implement much better because they'll be excited for it coming. So definitely just that early stage of evaluation, probably even before you've talked to anybody outside, understanding what you really need across the organization, really, really helpful. And then sort of the second one is just making sure you've put that time into the implementation, that resources are supported in being involved. Because if you put the effort in, then you'll get the value out. But if someone logs into the system and their inspections that they need aren't there, the drawings for their project aren't there, something like that, then they're just going to see an empty Procore project and it's not going to speak to them. So spend the time, just get those set. It's not much time at the start. Set those projects up, but it will save you so much time at the end. So just getting that effort in, being prepared to just put a little bit of resource into good implementation, get you the value way quicker.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And then I guess my tip is really just to, again, coming from that implementation side, is to jump in and just start using those tools as quickly as you can. So Stuart touched on it. It's playing around with Sandbox in your own test system, or if it's a live project there, just starting to really use those tools into that will help raise any questions, which you can then take to your implementation manager. They'll then not only be able to support you, but they'll be able to offer best practices. They'll be able to offer different ways of doing things that really suit your company. And that's really what they're there for, which is really nice. We had this feedback, and we're forever listening to feedback from clients, as Stuart mentioned there, and we do sort of satisfaction surveys at the end of implementation. But Antonio Ianni, who is the BIM manager at Connacht Island, so he mentioned this was something he did, was just getting into the system, and then in addition to that, also having these smaller focus groups throughout implementation. So really just checking in with the smaller teams, as you both said there, to make sure it is on track and that it's still doing what everyone sort of wanted in those early days, and starting to see the value in it, which I think is really cool there as well. But no, some great top tips. And then I guess a final question for you both is, if you were to implement Procore again, is there anything that you would do slightly differently? Stuart, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, I think from our point of view, we'd probably look to embrace it a little bit more quickly. We've certainly become a lot more confident with using different parts of the system, and also some of the other parts of the business with software packages. We really have kind of embraced them. So yeah, not to be scared, and to go at your own speed. Obviously, every business is different, and people have different comfort levels. But for me, it would be, yeah, actually, we could have done with rolling it out a little bit quicker. Because we'd have seen those improvements in efficiencies a lot quicker had we done so. Yeah.
Cool. Anne?
Yeah, again, it's going to be a quicker theme, but for me, it'd be just in the evaluation process. I've talked about quite a bit about getting people involved, but I was quite late in that process to get the teams that I'd asked for all their issues, but quite late to get them in front of sort of seeing a demo of Procore. I think if I'd done that earlier, got their buy-in earlier, they'd probably been more involved in the earlier stages of implementation. Just like Stuart's saying, as a result of that, I think probably could have got value quicker, more people up and running quicker. So it's just that, yeah, getting the right people involved a little bit earlier might have got things gone a little bit quicker, maybe got a couple more projects on there sooner.
Nice. No, great thoughts. So great, thank you both for sharing, and yeah, thanks for your insights today. I think that's really cool to hear from you both and from both sides of it there. And thank you everyone for attending the session. If you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. So we are available there to answer any questions. And if you do want to find out any more about this, we have some really good case studies on our website as well. Otherwise, thanks very much and goodbye.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie.